Welcome to the channel. In this video, we look at the Veritas DX60 and compare it to the Veritas low-angle block plane. Stick with me. Here they are side by side. We have the DX60 and the low angle. I believe they just call it the low angle block plane, so I'm just going to call it low angle and then the DX. Let's just take a second and look at them. Alright, so as you can see, they look different. Obviously, the stats are also different, so let's go over them. The DX60 comes in at 1 pound 11 ounces. The low angle comes in at 1 pound 13 ounces. Lengthwise, the DX60 is a 1/4 inch longer, so it comes in at 6 3/4 long. The low angle comes in at 6 1/2 long. Widthwise, this one is just slightly wider, so it's like 3/16 wider. This comes in at 2 inches. This one comes in at 1 13/16. You guys can tell me if my math is wrong. Just yell at me down below. Now, I wanted to look at height-wise too, because it's kind of important when it comes to a block plane, how tall it is, especially considering that it's low angle. If this was the standard angle, you would see a more significant height difference, but they're only 1/8 of an inch off. So the DX comes in at 2 inches tall, and the low angle comes in at 2 1/8 tall. Now, of course, that's going to the highest part on the cap here. The knob, this is something that I wanted to point out, just how tall the knob stands. So as you can see there, from the bottom measuring up, for the low angle, it's just over 1 inch, and for the DX, it's 7/8. So that makes a difference when you're using it, how tall it is right here for the knob, whether you're going to hold it this way or hold it like that. So that's why I wanted to point that out. Price-wise, this is where you're going to see the biggest difference. I mean, obviously, we're going to look at the performance. We're going to look at the different parts. The DX60, I can already tell it just feels more well-made than the low angle. Not that the low angle is like a cheap plane. It's just this one, they really went above and beyond with the quality. I guess that's the way that I'm trying to say it. So, the low angle, these are both for PMV 11 irons, okay? Low angle comes in at $169, and the DX comes in at $235. So, that's a pretty drastic price difference for a block plane, and that's why I wanted to look at them and do a review of them and find out, like, why? Why is it so drastically different? So, let's start taking them apart. Before I do, I also want to point out that the low angle, you can also buy like a tote knob for it. So, this is normally how I have it set up. When you put a tote knob on this, essentially it turns it into like a number 1. So, that's how I use it. I use it more as a number 1 than I do like a block plane. These do not fit on the DX60, just so you know. They also sell a knob, like the old Stanleys, if you want the ball knob on the back. I didn't like that. I liked having the tote. So this thing really makes a world of difference for this one, for me, and just the way that I use the plane. All right, so let's look at the cap. So this right here I love. Just that detail looks neat. They both have this extra plate down here, which I like. When you look at other brands, it's usually just a nib, so I love that they put this plate that gives it more contact. I thought this was really interesting, how they made the housing for this like internal, because this one's exposed. This one's right there so you can see it, but I like how this is like internal and you don't see it on the outside. I like that they put this detail. Now, I was worried, well, is it tough to seat it because you can't see? Because this one you can see and line it up. No. Because the way that it's machined, I mean, you can see on the sides, it fits right in there. So the plane is basically already telling you where to put the cap, which is, I like that a lot. I like that they did that, where this one's free. See that all the way through, it's free. This one, it's got these, I don't know how to explain it, but it's got these on the side that fit into it. See that? All right, so there are the caps. I like, initially, the shape of this. I'm worried about this part right here, and it kind of having that fin, if that's going to dig in. So we'll test that out in use. This one, this has always been comfortable to me. just because it's got more of a surface area too. So I think comfort-wise, they both might be the same, but again, we'll test that out. Here are the two different irons. Now, there is a width difference here. So the DX60 comes in at 1 3/8. The low angle comes in at 1 5/8. So 1/4 inch difference. That is going to change how tough it is to push this plane. And I guess maybe how detailed you're going to get with it. So it might come down to what you prefer in a block plane, but this is going to change how tough it is to push this plane. Now, I don't really want to get into like a shaving difference and stuff like that. I'm mostly going to look at the comfort because this one's A2 and this one's PMV11. And just from my experience, again, you can yell at me down below, I notice a difference in use. I don't care how sharp you have them. For some reason, I can feel a difference. And usually I can pick up, maybe I'm just a nerd. Maybe I'm just weird, but I can usually pick up a Veritas plane, use it, and tell what type of iron there is in there. I could just be OCD. I don't know. You guys tell me down below if you can notice a difference in the iron types. You guys can start that argument if you want to. All right, so here are the bodies. The screws that you see in here, that's to hold this. So normally they're not in there. Okay, so see how that tucks under there? Normally they're not in here, I just didn't take them out. But here's the body for the low angle. Here's the body for the DX60, which clearly you can see it has more support. I'm not exactly sure if they needed all of that. I mean, they're the machinists, I'm not. The iron does kind of sit up in here because that's where that line is going, but I haven't seen it on any other planes of theirs. This extra piece up here, but we'll find out if that makes a difference. Does this one come out? No. Unless it's just, oh no, it's held in there by, I like this. Can you see that hole right there? So it's held in by an Allen, and I like that a lot because I can't tell you how many times I've been looking at the planes and doing whatever, and then this thing just falls out onto the table. So I like that they made it that this doesn't come out. I like that a lot. It also, you can probably tighten it down to make it tougher or easier to adjust the lateral, because right now it's pretty stiff. But I'm guessing if you adjust that Allen key, you'll be able to change that. Like this one here. See how loose that is? So I kind of like that feature's added there. I didn't even know that was a thing. And that's, again, another reason I wanted to do this video, because there is not a lot of information online about this plane. So that's one thing I didn't know. They both do have adjustable mouths. So this one, see? That's exactly, that's why, sorry. So this one has the adjustable mouth that's like an internal one. I've run into issues before with this catching. So that's something to keep in mind. But there's really, usually you don't have it that close. Usually it's about right there when you have the iron in it. So it's not that much, but it is different. I like that this one's an internal, is what I call an internal mouth. So you still have this piece up here as a reference. So even if you close it, you still have that piece right there. One feature I like that they added is this right here. They have a stop. That. So you know how on their normal bench planes they have that little brass right here that you can set to prevent the mouth from smacking into the iron? They have that for this too. I wish it wasn't an Allen key, because you now have an Allen key for the back of this, you have an Allen key for right here, you have an Allen key for the sides, and they're different. So they do provide you with two of them, but I wish they figured out a way to get a little tiny brass knob or something in there just to make it easier. This one does not have that stop, and as you can see, it goes all the way. So be careful if you're going to use this one, because it doesn't have anything to stop the mouth from smacking into your iron. Here are the two different Allen keys. I borrowed this one from somebody, and these aren't open, so I don't want to open them. But there are the two Allen keys right there that you use to adjust back here, the mouth, and then on the sides here. So these are actually set screws, which is not normal for the Veritas planes. Typically they're flatheads, they're slotted screws. I actually have a special screwdriver that I use for Veritas planes because they have such a small screwdriver that I just keep this one under the bench. As you can see, I filed it down and made it a little bit smaller to fit into these grooves. So I don't know how I feel about this one being an Allen key because we already have an Allen key for the custom. I have another Allen key that's for the box maker's plane. Let me see if either of these fit in this plane and maybe that'll... Okay, so the custom Allen key works on the sides. And it works for the mouth adjustment here. It definitely won't work on that one. That one's way too small. So, at least if you have the custom line already, you know that this is going to work on here. Now, obviously, that was a little bit of a challenge, but it works. It's the same size. So I'm glad that they did that. The box makers maybe is just an odd one. I'm getting ready to sharpen the irons, and I noticed another detail I just wanted to point out. So, the low angle. See the wall right there? So it has the wall to prevent too much side to side. Now again, that's what the set screws do. They center your blade to maximize the lateral adjustment. I've had some people say they can set the set screws and they never have to adjust their lateral. I don't know how that's possible on these kinds of planes because that's the fulcrum point right there to maximize your lateral adjustment. But they have machined walls right here to minimize that space a little bit more but still give you the width of the plane. So on the DX60, they did the same thing. They just extended that wall out farther. I did check with the irons in, and it's still the same amount of space. You won't be able to see it on the camera, but when I put the irons in here and scoot it to the side, that space on here, and then this space over here, I didn't put the adjuster in, is the same. So they didn't machine this tighter or anything like that. They just extended the walls, which I like, but just a note. All right, let me sharpen these up, and then I will show you them in use. Can they both take butter shavings? Yes, they can. Can they both take thick shavings? Yes, they can. Do they both operate well? Yes. Is the DX60 better? Yes. So it's machined better, it looks better, it's more comfortable to use. Specifically when it comes to one-handed use, it's a lot more comfortable to use because it just fits well. I don't know how to explain it, but it's almost like they took a hand and like molded the plane to the hand, which I like a lot. This one was a little bit unwieldy when it comes to one-handed use. The other time I ran into an issue with this one is when I was working on the edges of the board or the narrower stock, it just felt unwieldy and felt just like blocky in my... It's a blocky block... I'm sorry. The DX60 being just 3/16 narrower made a difference. Now, I do have one complaint about this plane. and that's the weight distribution, is very much right here. So all of the weight is pretty much where my fingers are, and it's very back heavy. So when you're starting at the end of the board, if you're using it one hand, you have to put a lot of pressure with this finger. If you're going to use it this way, you have to put just a lot of pressure forward because it is so back heavy. So I really wish they would have balanced that out a little bit more and figured out how to get a little bit more weight into the front. Now, if it was all centered, that would be fine, but it's very much right here where the weight's falling. When you look at the low angle block plane, it's pretty much right where my fingers are. So it's more of a centered weight, which I like. I don't know if it's just me, but I really do pay attention to the weight distribution. Now, I had talked about I was worried about this piece digging into your palm. If you tend to be a person that like pushes the plane versus being on top of it, then absolutely this is going to dig right into your palm right there, just that little hook. The other issue you're going to run into is you're going to bump this, which could change the depth, because that happened to me twice when I was testing back here to see if I could push the plane and not have it dig in. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're going to use this one, don't try to push it from back here. Try to stay more on top of it. If you have this one, you can push from the back because you have more room. And for some reason, I don't know, it didn't slip on me when I was pushing more with this one because you're just set. See how you have that gap? You're set a little bit higher versus this one. If you're going to go to push with it, you're right on top of it. Hopefully you guys can see that. Overall, I like the low angle block plane with the tote and the knob. Now, a block plane is not a tool that I use very often in my shop. If it's something you use a lot, then absolutely the DX60 is worth the investment. If it's something you don't use a lot, the low angle one's going to be just fine. If you want to use it in place of like a number one, grab that tote and the knob for it and you won't be disappointed. Honestly, with either of them, you won't be disappointed. It's just going to come down to how much money do you have in your pocket, how often you're going to use it, do you use it one-handed, are you okay with a wider one, those kinds of things. So hopefully this helped answer some of your questions and helped you make a decision. If you picked one over the other, if you have both and have tried them side by side, if you don't like either of them, if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to let us know down below. I hope you enjoyed and have a good day.